Hi there, BookTube. It's Roz, and it's already the 2nd of August, and I haven't done an August TBR or Pile of Possibilities video. And sometimes I wonder, why do I do TBR videos? And I wonder if they're really particularly interesting to anybody other than me, what I'm planning to read. But I like to do them because it helps me I enjoy the planning and it helps me commit to things. And sometimes, the responses that I get and what you say you've enjoyed or find interesting influence what I get to amongst the possibilities if I'm not going to get to all of them. The other thing that I like to do in TBR videos is mention any interesting reading events and readathons that I'm participating in that month to share the love, and in case you want to pick up on any of them too. So let's go for it. And July this year was dominated for me by Jane Austen July, a big reading event, and also reading some chunky things for the BookTube Prize. So I'm hoping in August to keep it a bit more simple and not over plan to overdo it. But I am co-hosting a reading thing, so I have to do that for sure. And that is Faulkner in August, where every August we read a novel by William Faulkner, and this year it's this one, As I Lay Dying. Now this is absolutely classic Faulkner, everything you hope from a Faulkner novel, set in Yoknapatawpha County, his invented county in the deep south of America. It's got its unusual structure. This is quite stream of consciousness, slightly exaggerated, dramatic characters, but yet there's a slightly homely quality to the characters in this book compared with some, I suppose, of his, and it has a bit of an Odyssey flavour as well. Now, if you're watching this at the very beginning of August, given that As I Lay Dying is not overly long, it looks longer than it is because it's in this copy, because it's small, big print, small areas of text. It's not too late to join the group and join in reading this if you fancy it. I'll leave a link to my announcement video below so you can follow up on that if you want to. There you go. So, am I going to take part in any other reading eventy things? Well, two things. Firstly, Marilyn Meyer Mendoza is hosting a readathon called Phenomenal Women, and she's particularly encouraging people to read or reread books by Maya Angelou, who was, of course, a phenomenal woman and someone who's very dear to Marilyn Meyer Mendoza. So that is wonderful. But she's also encouraging us just generally to read things by phenomenal women writers in August. And I'm not going to read any Maya Angelou this month, but I'm definitely up for reading phenomenal women writers. Also, phenomenal women writers writing about phenomenal women. So I've got quite a few of those in amongst my plans, because coincidentally, I think August is also Women in Translation Month. So another reason to be reading women writers. And, I read Women in Translation every month, don't I, more or less? But I'm using this as a spur to read a relatively new translation of a book by Clarice Lispector, who's one of my absolute favourite women in translation to read, and it's translated by Benjamin Moser. It's The Apple in the Dark, her novel from 1961, and it's unusual for her, actually, because it's got a male protagonist, and the start of the book, the pretext of the book, is that this man thinks that he's killed his wife, and so he flees. But this being Lispector, we are not going to get some sort of crime thrillery sort of story. It's going to be something completely different, and I can't wait. And apparently, it's a book that she was particularly fond of amongst her own books. So splendid. Now, another phenomenal woman writer, but not in translation, that I'm reading this month, and sort of new fiction, as it were, because I like reading some stuff when it's all shiny and new, is the writer is Ingrid Pood. Apparently it is pronounced like that in Trinidad and Tobago, where she's from. And she wrote Love After Love. That was her first novel, which came out, I think, in 2020, and I absolutely loved that. And this is her new one. It's The Lost Love Songs of Boysie Singh. And it's kind of historical fiction. Well, it's set in the 1950s, I think. It basically starts with, and it's in Trinidad again, and it starts with the execution, I think, of Boysie Singh. So, we know that that's going to be his end. But he was a real life notorious Trinidadian gangster, and she sort of tells a fictionalized version of his account through four women who had a role in his life. I am really looking forward to this one. It's on the chunky side, but as I say, I really enjoyed her writing in Love After Love. If it's similar, there will be quite a lot of it that's in a sort of Trini dialect, and that can be, you have to find the voice to get comfortable with the book, but I found out I could do that in Love After Love. So tell me, have you read this one yet? Are you planning on reading it? Did you love Love After Love too? High hopes of that one. Now, another newish fiction novel that I'm going to read this month, not by a woman, phenomenal or otherwise, but one that I'm so keen to read because I've heard such positive things about it from fellow booktubers, Sean Bree's books, Charlie Brooks, and it's called Small Joys by Elvin James Mensah, came out in 2023. Mensah is from Southeast London, and he's a black gay author, and it's, from what I gather, it's a sort of a story of a young-ish gay man who goes out from the city into the countryside. I think things have gone a bit wrong in his life, and it's kind of about friendship and found family and mental health and bird watching. And as I say, comes very highly recommended. And that's the book that Tilly and I are reading for our new fiction project. We're trying to read something each month that is relatively recent and do a Zoom discussion that we then film and share. So that one's coming soon. So again, if you had in mind to read it, why not read it? And then, when we do our Zoom discussion, you'll have loads to add and say in the comments. That would be lovely. I would really like that. Then, other newish fiction I'm going to need to read this month is two things for the BookTube final round. So I took part in the semi-finals, as I say. I'm a judge for the final fiction round 2. Obviously, there's 6 books in the final, but 4 of them I've read already because, I've been judging various of the rounds. But there are 2 that are new to me, which I'll be reading this month. And one of those is Northwoods by Daniel Mason, American author. Now, this is sort of slightly unusual historical fiction. It's based around one house in the woods in New England and sort of successive generations in the house. But the common factor is the woods and the house rather than the people, if that makes sense. Looking forward to that. The other, completely different, contemporary Irish, set in Cork, I think, Cork City, is called The Rachel Incident. It's by Caroline O'Donoghue. And whereas Northwoods was a book that I had in mind to read anyway, and might have got around to, just happened not to have done, The Rachel Incident would not have been on my radar because it's sort of coming of agey, love, friendship, kind of a bit, kind of funny, I gather, but also, moving and meaningful. So we'll see. It doesn't exactly sound like a Rose book, but we'll see what I make of it. Then I have some non-fiction in mind to read, and number one sort of non-fiction choice, which fits with the Phenomenal Women challenge again, because it's about a phenomenal woman by a phenomenal woman, well, a woman writer, should we say, is Wifedom. Wifedom, Mrs. Orwell's Invisible Life. I think it was one of the non-fiction BookTube Prize sort of semi-finalists, but I think didn't make it to the final. But it's by Anna Funder. Came out in 2023, obviously. It's about Eileen O'Shaughnessy, who was a accomplished writer in her own right, but she married Eric Blair, or George Orwell, as we know him best, and in 1936, and Orwell kind of just blithely assumed that from then on her primary role would be to kind of support him and his writing rather than pursue hers. And so Funder is writing about O'Shaughnessy, she's writing about George Orwell, she's writing about herself, I think, as well. There's sort of memoir elements to it. And it's unusual in that she sort of includes some sort of fictionalized content too, sort of trying to get inside Eileen's head, I think. So we shall see. Should be interesting. Again, if you've read it, tell me what you think. Then, the other non-fiction book that I'm going to start, but not necessarily expecting to finish in August, was one I meant to start in July but didn't get to because too much over. Sometimes my bookish eyes are bigger than my bookish stomach. But that is Eve: How the Female Body Drove 200 Million Years of Human Evolution by a woman writer, Kat Bohannon. And it definitely feels like that meets the Phenomenal Woman prompt, doesn't it? So I'm looking forward to starting that and seeing where I get with it. I have a bit of a thing, about having sort of long, slow reads on the go. Now, Eve, I hope to read, over, August and September maybe. And another one that I'm thinking I may do in a similar way is this, and this will be my other sort of Women in Translation Month choice, but as I say, I'm not expecting to finish it in August because it is the Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, who was a 11th century Japanese sort of woman of the court, and it's a unique and extraordinary book, apparently. It's this is edited and translated by Royall Tyler. It's not the complete Tale of Genji is much fatter, but this is a sort of a sensible kind of abridgment that I hope, if I'm absolutely captivated by it, maybe I'll eventually read the full version. But this looks about right for me, and but I have a feeling it's not the sort of thing that you devour all in one go, So I'm going to spread it a little. So that's my other Women in Translation and Phenomenal Women choice. Then I've got a few other long, slow reads on the go that are more extended long, slow reads. So I've mentioned them before, Indigenous Literature in Micronesia, the Iliad. I might be getting close to the end of that, which is why I sort of felt confident to start this. And the In Parenthesis, which is a kind of prose poem novel by David Jones, Welsh author from early 20th century. About the First World War. I'm really enjoying it, but I'm just reading one little bit each month and relishing it. And finally, one that I started in July, which is the poems of Nazim Hikmet, translated by Randy Blasing and Mutlu Konak, I think. And he is the kind of perhaps the premier most significant 20th century Turkish poet and Turkish kind of revolutionary poet. He was quite, spent a lot of time in prison, wrote some amazing poetry. And I've read the first sort of little chunk of that. It was a gift to me from Berna, and it's It's really fine stuff. I'm very excited to be reading that one. So that's my August plans. Always pleased to hear yours, and is always particularly pleased to hear if you've read or are planning to read any of the things that I am, because that's part of the lovely BookTube interconnection.